Hey all, so here we are again. Going to do another thing. As you know, I've been starting to do a Python course. That was my previous class today, previous effort today. Um, but now I'm going to actually try to do some GraphQL. Now, I did read what this is, what GraphQL is. I didn't even know what it was. that's showing you how little I actually know about GraphQL. It is a query language. It's basically, it's like Next.js. It's almost like I would call it a Next.js or Node.js add-on. It basically allows you to be more complex with your data, get a little bit more information back with less effort. Well, not less effort. You can just get more information back through the query language you're using to interact with your database. I don't know what databases you could even attach to, but you can see here, this is making a GraphQL server with Apollo. I believe that's kind of like making a JSON server. It's something you would use on your local machine. So this is allowing you to do your GraphQL logic locally so that you can test and do that kind of thing. I don't know. I would imagine GraphQL could be used with any database that you can connect to through Next.js. I don't know. But let's go ahead and kind of start this class. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to pull this out over here, and I'm going to put it in my side window. And what I believe I'll be using, I should be using VS Code in this, but I don't know. We'll see.
So then, before we get started actually making a GraphQL server that can handle all of our query.
So yeah, we're going to be doing this in VS Code. And it's probably going to open the last thing I did, which was this thing. Oh, I don't need that. I don't even know what Quokka is. How did I even end up with this? Purchase review, what is this? What's new section? I don't know what that is. All right.
Queries. I wanted to go over the basics of this query language right here and show you how we typically structure these queries from the front end. Now, to do this, we're going to be using Apollo Explorer, which I showed you briefly in the first video of the series. And Apollo Explorer is a way for us to send test queries to a GraphQL server and see the responses that we get back from it. Now, you might have worked with something called Postman before, which is for REST APIs, and it's basically a GraphQL version of Postman, what we're using here. It allows us to test and send queries as we would from a front-end application without having to actually build.
Because you don't want to get sick. You don't want to be miserable again?
No, I don't, but I don't care. I'll kiss you anyway.
Oh, gosh. I found some, like, Kroger brand. It's like the same as Tylenol sinus or something. So I took 2 of those now to see how it's going to make me feel. Sometimes I get loopy, even though.
Oh yeah, well, loopy's a cold medicine thing. Yeah, that's pretty common.
It's hard at work.
So I'm gonna do a little bit more of this, and I'll probably go out and mow in about an hour and a half or 2.
That's good because it's getting kind of long.
Yeah, probably do the front.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll do both, but we'll see how much is there and how I feel at the moment.
I assume nothing from Prime Therapeutics for anybody else?
No, I've got a few rejections, but no, nothing new.
It's tough, I hear.
Yeah, fun. Always finding more. I gotta apply for a couple more. I did apply for a few yesterday, but I'll apply some more today. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go back a little bit. Did something. I
Obsolete.
think he's using
We
a
don't
different
need query,
tool than I
which means that
expected.
we've overfetched what we do need. So that's the first drawback, overfetching. The second drawback,
So he's
the
using
polar
this
opposite,
tool.
underfetching. And underfetching is when
Apollo.
we don't get back all the data that we need from a single
Is this a
request.
free thing?
And it could lead to making multiple requests to different endpoints to collate everything that we need together. For example, we might send a GET request for a single course. The server handles that request by getting the course from a database and sending it back in JSON format. And it might look something like this, with an ID, title, thumbnail URL, description, the author property, which contains the author name and the author ID, price, video URL, etc. And in this case, we need all of those things. That's great.
I don't know
So
where
we
Apollo
show all of
server
those
is.
on our course page on a website, but typically do that to back from the server. ID, and then also get the courses of the author run. But you can also perform something called mutation. This course then, we'll be making a GraphQL server from scratch using Node.js and a package called Apollo Server. And that server is going to be responsible for handling all the queries and mutations that we send to it. Now, to send the queries, we'll be using Apollo Explorer, which is a GraphQL client that we can run in the browser. You can kind of think of this as a bit like Postman, but it's the GraphQL equivalent.
Okay, so
And Postman, by the way, is a free tool to test out REST API.
So Postman, which I've used on a number of occasions, is also what I was using when I was working with Superbase and Next.js. It's how you test the commands, the gets, the posts. It's for REST APIs. Whereas this is for GraphQL. It's an Apollo. It's called Apollo something or other. And I'm trying to figure out how. I'm trying to figure out where you get that. I don't think this. He talks about using it, but he doesn't actually show you.
APIs. So you're going to learn how to set up a GraphQL server and also how to make queries and mutations from the front end using this kind of GraphQL syntax. So the
Okay, so we're into that.
queries as we would from a front-end application without having to actually build a front end. So the way we're going to be making and sending queries from here is essentially the same way we'd be sending them from a client-side application like a React app, for example. So this window right here is where we're going to be making the queries, and then to send them, we'd press this button right here and the link down below. And when you open the sandbox, it connects to a dummy GraphQL server, so you can play around with requests without having to worry about making a server yourself. But for now, I'm going to go back to the Explorer connected to my own GraphQL server because that's more pertinent to the rest of this course that we're doing. So then, how do we make a query using GraphQL?
Well, it's interesting because he doesn't get into creating GraphQL on your local system. He does show you how, but it's like.
Well, first off, we'd use this word query, and then after that, we can give those resources for each root fetch. And the way we do that is by opening curly braces again, and then writing down whatever fields we review object. So this is a really cool feature of GraphQL, only getting back the fields from the data that we actually need. Now, before we go any further, I want to just jump to some slides that quickly explain from a bird's eye perspective how we query a graph and move around it to navigate data. So when we make a GraphQL server or API, we're making something called a graph, right? And a graph in visual terms is basically a bunch of connected data that looks something like this. So in this case, we've got three different data types. We've got reviews, authors, and games. And we can choose to jump into the graph at any point that's exposed to us by the server when we make a query. And from there, the GraphQL layer allows us to traverse or walk through this graph to also fetch any related data to that starting point, right? So we just made a simple query whereby we requested.
Now, some of these things, I don't know if this one is out there on YouTube, but you might be able to go to YouTube and find this GraphQL by Init Ninja. At the very least, sometimes they'll have the very basic descriptions, and you can decide if this is the kind of class for you. This is only like 90 minutes worth of training.
And I could also specify which
He's just telling you what it looks like. So here we got GraphQL is stating that it's a graph and you're using these images and you can connect to the various data sources, data types through various points. And that's kind of what he's explaining here.
And the author is separate resource. And all of this data would be brought back from a single request. We've only made one query and sent that one query to the server. We didn't have to first get the reviews and then make a second request for the authors of each of those reviews.
See, a GraphQL differs from, I mean, again, he explains all this, and I'm just kind of reiterating because I already listened to what GraphQL is. But basically, it allows you to do things like getting a review, and also getting back the author and the other reviews that that author has done, all in one call. So they basically come back in what looks like a JSON file with nested values for arrays. Comes back with a more complex JSON file of sorts. So that's kind of what you're doing here. And he's really just explaining this kind of stuff here during this 10-minute interface.
My initial entry point to the graph would be a specific game with a certain ID. And the query for that would look something like this, where we specify the ID of the game that we want as a variable. Now, we'll learn more about query variables later on, so don't worry too much about that for now. But then, having jumped in at this point on that game, I could also say, get me any review related to that game. And from those reviews, just get me the rating field. And to take it one step further, I could also say then, get me the author of each of those reviews and just give me their name. So you can see how this general idea of...
See how it's like takes the review, get the rating, and the author, and the name of the author. So it's kind of like referential integrity, or if you know what referential integrity databases are, you're basically looking at them through other points of relation. So you're connecting here through the author name, and the author name you get other info. So he's demoing here because he hasn't actually shown you how to set this query basics thing up. So
the author of each review. Now this author is actually a separate resource, so they don't have author properties, these reviews. They're a separate
so like I've gone to like get started, and it wants set up. Okay, create a new React project locally with Vita or Vite. Create a new React sandbox on Code Sandbox. Applications that use Apollo client require 2 top-level dependencies. So I would probably try to set it up in code, just because that's where I would end up. So we could probably do this npm install here.
Also get the game associated with each review. So down here, I could say game, and then inside parentheses, or rather curly braces, we can say which properties we want back for the game. So I could say the title of the game.
I've been installing so much stuff on my Visual Studio.
Of the game, and it looks here like we don't actually have a price property. So let me get rid of that. We mustn't have added that. So let me just leave it with the title and platform. Press that, and we can see now we get the title of each game and the platform of each game as well, which is an array.
Funny, he mentions Final Fantasy Remake because he's pulling, that using that as an example. I want that game. The Final Fantasy Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake. I want that.
We could say, okay, well, get me all the reviews now associated with...
Okay, so that's installed.
So let's do it right here. We can say we want the reviews from each author, and from that, we just want the rating and we want the ID of each review. Click on that, and now you can see nested inside the author.
Our example application will use the flyby GraphQL API from the Apollo Odyssey Voyage tutorial. This API provides a list of intergalactic travel locations and details about those locations. Okay.
All right, and how flexible it is. That's really cool, isn't it? All in one query. So, like I said before, we can also...
So the sample he came up with is basically this one big get, right? So he's getting the reviews, the ID, the author, the name, verified from the author what reviews he's had, along with all of those ratings, ID, game, and the title. So he's getting this nesting of, we got reviews, we're going to go get reviews based on the ID, but then we're going to get the authors back and whatever reviews they've done with all that information and whatever games they've been doing them on. So you're getting a lot back. Additionally, you might even get back a bunch of the games that this is doing. So you got rating, content, ID, and the game. So it's a big nested monster of a query. You're getting all your stuff back by simply just saying what you want and how you want it. Not
This complex. I just wanted to show you how we can work with this related nested data, all right, and how flexible it is. That's really
so he's getting the data back, and then it comes back looking like this.
So, like I said before, we can also have mutations to add new games if we want to, delete games or reviews, whatever it might be, to update different records. So we're going to see all of that later on as well.
So again, all this is
So
just a
now
big
hopefully
demo
we can
of what
understand a little bit more about
GraphQL
how these
can
queries
do.
are made and how we can fetch related data within a single query. Now there is much more to GraphQL than making queries like this, but for now I think that's probably enough to get us started. I just wanted to make sure we all have a little bit of an understanding of this general syntax. So in the next lesson, we're going to start making our very own GraphQL server on the back end.
So we're going to create our own server here.
Alright then gang, so now we want to make a brand new GraphQL API, and to do that we'll be using Node.js and a library called Apollo Server. An Apollo Server is one of many different libraries that you can use to easily spin up a GraphQL server, and each library has their own kind of take on it. But the nice thing about using Apollo Server is that it automatically spins up an instance of the Apollo Explorer for us on localhost, which we can use then to test out our API. So when we use Apollo Server, it's going to create a GraphQL server for us that then allows us to easily set up resolver functions that can respond to incoming queries. It also lets us easily model our different data types like authors, blogs, reviews, etc., and decide how they're all connected on the graph by making something called a schema. So we'll talk more about that in the next lesson, but for now, let's go ahead and make a new node project and install Apollo Server. Alright, so I'm on the Apollo docs right here, Apollo Server, and I will leave this link down below. Just click on Get Started, and this is going to show us how to make a new project with Apollo Server. So the first step is to make a new directory, then cd into that, and then we initialize a new project, a new node project using npm. We also set the type.
Okay, so he's using Apollo Server here. I'm trying to see how he's going to get started. Create new project. All right, from your preferred development directory, create a directory for a new project and cd into it. So yeah, we're just going to go on to my, I'm just going to put these all under Git because I'm actually uploading. Most of these going to end up on Git. All this work I've been doing, I am making them public because they are just training videos and they're not actually my code. So it's just, I mean, yes, it's the code I've coded, but it's not, not actually. So I got like my Next.js masterclass, which I put up there already. I've done, this is just a dummy value. I'm doing a Python one, but that's not actually, I haven't done any code yet because we're just doing practice-y stuff. Haven't actually written any application yet, so I have nothing to upload. I also have a React one that is currently up on the on my Git, but that one is not here. I don't know where I put that one. But it's called React something or other, but that's up there too. But I will I'm going to add a new folder here. We're going to call this one GraphQL crash course. Something I can later add up to my objective to Git. You can get to this with apollographql.com. We're going to go here and we're going to open up a new directory here. We're going to open this up in command view. Let's see. Yeah. Open in terminal. So we are already in here, and then we're going to go ahead and say make dir. We're going to create a I don't know why that pops out like that when I'm not on it, which is weird. Stop it. Stop it. Why does it do that? I don't want it. Stop showing me stuff I don't want. Okay. There we go. We're going to do make dir. I could actually just go. It would probably just be easier for me. People are so. Everything is in the command line these days. I don't know why they do that. I'm just going to go in here and type new folder because this is the Windows world, man. I'm going to just do it. GRAPHQL dash server dash example. And he might name it something else actually. But let's see if he does, because he's just reading through this. I don't know if he's skipping over it.
And that allows us to use ES6 modules, so we can say import something from something rather than require. And it also allows us to use top level await as well. Once we've done that, we have to install a couple of dependencies, GraphQL, which is the meat and bones of GraphQL. We need to install that, but also Apollo Server, and that's the GraphQL library that we're going to use, which makes it really easy to spin up a GraphQL server, make schemas, types, respond to queries using resolver functions and all that jazz. So it just makes working with GraphQL so easy. So we're going to install both of those right here. Now if you're using TypeScript, then you can follow these directions. We're going to be using JavaScript, and basically we're just opening up the index.js file, or rather we're making one and then opening the file up. And notice here we have that type set to module inside package.json as well. So once we've done that, it's all set up, and we can go ahead and start defining the schema, the resolver functions. And
He's just going through this page here.
Let us go up here. I'm just going to copy the installs up here, so these two things, so we can use them in our project. Alright, so I've opened the terminal right here and navigated to this directory where I want to make the project. Then I'm going to say npm init and then -y, and that's going to create our package.json file for us. I also want to say npm pkg, and then we want to set the type to be equal to module. That allows us to use ESC.
Alright, so he's doing these. Did I not use bash? Let's do this. GraphQL crash course. Close enough. I'm just doing it like he does it here. I'm doing it like the net ninja's doing it, not like they're doing it. It's just different folder names. So we get this bit going on, and then he's going to do npm package set type equals module.
Modules, we'll see that inside package.json in a second. Then I'm going to open up this directory in Visual Studio Code, so code, then space, then full stop, press enter.
So this is going to open up our Visual Studio in that new folder. It's all we did is really create the folder.
See that the type is module. Awesome. Okay, so now we need to install those dependencies. So open up a new terminal, and you want to paste in the npm install that we grabbed from the Apollo docs. So it should be at apollo/server and also GraphQL. So press enter to install the.
Okay, so I believe I've already done this, but I'll do it again. Copy. Apollo server GraphQL. Like I said, I think I've already done this. Oops. When you do an install of something you've already got, it typically does it anyway. it's going to be pretty much the same, except for now it's using some of my other items, I think, as a setup. So hopefully it'll be a little straightforward.
Those dependencies. Alright, and now that's done, the next thing I'm going to do is create an index.js file, and this is where we're going to set up our Apollo server for GraphQL. So the way we do this is we first of all import a couple of things. So I'm going to paste these in. We import Apollo server from @apollo /
He says, I'm pasting these in. I was like, wow, I don't have those. I need to get those. He just has them already in his thing here, so.
Server, that was the package we just installed. And then also we import this thing start standalone server from @apollo / server / standalone. So basically this Apollo server is for us to set up the server, configure it, and tell Apollo how to handle all of our different types of data and respond to queries and things like that. This one right here, this is just to start up the server so we can start listing for requests.
So essentially we are setting up an Apollo server variation of the JSON server. It's just different data, different handling of that data. We're giving ourselves a different UI, different tool set.
Do our server setup. So we can say const server is equal to new Apollo server, like so. So that's this thing right here. Alright, like so. And then down here, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but down here, I'm going to say const, and then URL, the instruction here is equal to await, and then start standalone server, so that's the other thing we imported, and then we pass in this Apollo server we just created, and then as a second argument, an object, we say right here, we want to listen to a particular port number, so we pass an object with the value here, and we say the port is 4000, and then down at the bottom I'll just do a little console.log, and then in here I'll say server ready at port, and then it was 4000. Okay, so we've got the basic setup sorted now. We're using Apollo to create a new Apollo server, and we start the server using this method down here. Now the Apollo server takes in an object as an argument, and that object expects two properties.
So we're going to pass in a property into the Apollo server here.
Which is short for type definitions.
And I'm just putting in the comments he does because he does.
The relationship they have with other data types. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the next lesson. But the other property is a resolvers property, which is basically a bunch of resolver functions that determine how we respond to queries for different data.
So resolvers tell you how to respond to queries.
We're going to look at that first property, type defs, and we're going to make up our own schema.
Going to build a schema. Basically, so that's it. That's it, man. We've apparently done
My friends, so
the setup. That was it, man. We've done everything there is to do for that section. We are already on 4, and there's only 9 parts. So we are cruising right through this. Granted, some of these are a little longer than others. Some of the meatier ones are coming up. But hey, we've there's a 10-minute intro, 10-minute basics, which is just demo. 558 is actual work of setting up the Apollo. So hey, we've done almost 30 minutes worth of work here, and we're ready to move on.
So now we're going to make some type definitions, and then later on as well some resolver functions, which we can then pass into the Apollo.
I'm going to start with type defs.
Magic with them. So let's start with the type defs. What are type defs? Well, type defs are definitions of the different types of data we want to expose on our graph. For example, we might make a type def or an author data type and specify the different fields that author might have, like a name, an avatar
He's just,
URL,
I'm not going to write much more, but just different types of data. It's really what the definition of them, how we're going to create
so
those.
These would be the different types of data that we want to make available on the graph that a user can then eventually.
So note this compared to the Python class I've been doing, where you're basically coding the entire time. He explains what they are as you do it, and you just kind of keep moving. This is kind of preferred to me versus the college-based classes that Coursera is kicking out, where you have a lot of lecturing and not nearly as much actual coding.
The data that's available on the graph will be fairly similar to the data you're storing in your application database. Now, it can be different. They don't have
I
to
mean,
match or
some of these are
anything.
like 20-minute
GraphQL is a layer
lectures
between
for
your
the simple
database
10-minute
and
bit that we're
client-side
doing. And
queries.
that's how it
So
would be with the
generally
class.
speaking, the schema will probably look fairly similar to the kind of data that you have in your database. So let's try making a schema then with a few different types of data.
So we're going to build a
add to
schema
our
now.
graph. Now to do this, I'm going to make a new file called schema.js, and inside this is where I'm going to define all of my different types of data. Now before we do anything inside here, I want to show you a package I've got installed. So just typing up here GraphQL, and it's this one, GraphQL syntax highlighting. So what this does is it allows us to have syntax highlighting.
He's pointing out a class,
without this, we wouldn't get that.
GraphQL
If we
syntax.
scroll down, it might show you an example. You can see down here.
This just kind of points out, helps you with your
This
syntax.
is how we're going to be using it, using a template string, and then we start the template string with hash GraphQL. And if we do that, when we're making our types inside that template string, we're going to get syntax highlighting on them. So definitely install this package first of all, or a similar one. Then if we go back to the schema file, the way we're going to...
Hello? This is.
Hi, this is Mackenzie with Workforce giving you a call. This is regarding the letter that you should have received from unemployment for scheduling an appointment with someone here at Workforce.
Oh, okay.
Does that sound familiar?
I got a letter from unemployment right after they finally approved my unemployment, and my assumption was it was just the written version.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah,
I didn't
so
actually.
It's kind of random. Okay, yeah, it's kind of random. Some folks get selected to partake in just appointments that's kind of like the supportive side of being on unemployment. But if you are open to it, I can help you schedule that right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, and you have until the 20th of May to complete this appointment. I do have a couple of openings this week. I have several next week as well, both in person and virtually.
Okay.
Did you have a preference of virtual or in person?
Virtual would probably be easier to attend.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to try to get it done tomorrow or Friday? Or
How long are the classes?
It's usually about an hour.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could do it tomorrow. That's fine.
Okay, let's see. I have my one time slot for tomorrow is 3:15. Is that okay for you?
3:15 tomorrow. Okay. One of the perks of being unemployed. Apparently, you get the privilege of taking part in a conversation with a work source employment specialist. Something you're required to do if they decide to pick you to do the work source specialist meetup. So, just one of the things about how our unemployment here in Washington works. I know every state's got their own little thing. So I had to set that up. So that's tomorrow afternoon. So I may not be doing this tomorrow. Well, maybe I will do it before. But tomorrow is also D&D day, and I've got to do a lot of planning for that, and I haven't done enough of that. Anyway, back on task. Let's see. So where were we? We're going to finish up a couple of items here before it gets too late. Let's get things set up here. So the syntax highlighting is essentially just a tool to kind of help you with keeping things clean. he's going to be putting in a couple of particular commands and codes along that way to allow us to actually utilize this. And he's kind of explaining to me what it is that entails, which is putting in a couple things. One of them is we are now going to be using the schema folder where we're going to define our Apollo database.
This is by first of all exporting a constant, because we're going to use this schema inside this index file over here, so we need to import it later. So make sure you export it first. We'll call this type defs, and we set this equal to a template string. And like we just saw, we started with hash GraphQL, and notice when I press L now, it goes green to signal we are going to get syntax highlighting for this. Now inside here, we're going to define our different types, and built into GraphQL, there
Interesting.
are 5 basic scalar.
Oh, okay, wait.
So, ints, which are just basically.
So this is a little bit like when you do a string thing, when you're applying bits. What this is going to do is, oops. We see how I changed colors there? This tells you that you're doing something with GraphQL, but I also have to. Dang it! Is that the same one? Hold on, I know I got to take these calls. It's annoying. That one actually was spam. The problem is what it makes me ignore them a lot of times because it comes up as spam. The work source thing shows up as spam. And then this one showed up as spam too, so I thought it was related to the same one. And obviously this one was actually spam. That's why they didn't talk to me. I don't even know why they call. I'll have to block the second one, I guess. Back to task.
Decimal numbers. We have strings.
So he's just calling stuff out. I don't want to do that.
We have a special ID type as well. Now, the ID type is something that GraphQL uses as a key for data objects. Now, they're basically serialized as strings, and that's how we're going to declare the IDs in our data when we make it.
When he wants to give you a note, he writes it as a comment in the code. I'm not going to write that down.
And these 5 types right here,
because it's not needed.
ones you find yourself using pretty much 99% of the time. You can make your own types to build on top of this and use them, which we'll see kind of later on. But yeah, these are the types we're going to be using. So let's delete that and then go up here. Now, we want to make different data types for our different types of data that we're going to have later on. Now, we're going to have 3 types of data. We're going to have game objects, we're going to have review objects, and also author objects. So they're the 3 different types we need.
He's telling you what types we're creating.
Inside this template string. Now, the way we make a type is by saying type first of all, then the name of the type. So we'll start with game, and then inside here we'll define the different properties that a game data type should have. So it should have an ID property, and then we do a colon and we say what data type is that using the 5 different types that we just saw. Well, this is going to be a type ID.
Okay, so ID is a key item. It's a type.
That's going to be a string.
Oops.
And then the third one will be a platform. Now that could be a string as well. However, it might have multiple platforms.
I don't know why I did that.
Ideally, we want this to be an array of strings, and we can say that something is an array of a certain type by just putting square brackets around it. So now we're saying the type of this property should be an array of strings. All right. So at the minute, if we were to make a new game using this type later on, there's nothing to say that these are required fields. Now we can make a field required by adding on the exclamation mark at the end of something. If we don't have that, then we're basically...
So ID is probably required. He's saying that if you add an exclamation point, it says it's a required field.
So I
wonder if I can put a comment on that, just so that I know for my own.
Now,
nope.
Right here,
guess
this
not.
exclamation mark is outside of the square brackets, meaning we must have a value for platform, which is an array of strings, but the the elements inside that array can be nullable at the minute because we don't have an exclamation mark after this. So we need it there as well to say that this string can't be nullable. All right, so we need 2 here.
Okay, so we're putting in 2 exclamations because this says that the platform is a required field, but the items inside don't necessarily have to be, but until you put in another one inside that says now those strings have to be insert. They have to have something here. You can't put nulls inside of the platform. So the array has to be a full value. So you can be apples, oranges, and pears, but you can't be apples, nothing in pairs. It has to be something every time.
Entire value type, and then 1 for the type inside the array as well.
So he's basically making
Okay, so that's
everything
good.
required, which makes sense if you're going to store data for a game.
Review this time.
Now he's creating another one.
Inside here, we also want an ID, which is of type ID required, and then we also need second property. And by the way, you don't need commas here.
Oh,
Second property inside
apparently you don't
here,
need commas.
which is going to be the rating, and that's going to be an integer, also required. And then the third one will be the content of the review, and that is going to
Now
be.
I don't know that you can
also
not do
required.
commas.
So that's the second type. The third one is author. So type author. And inside here, again, we need an ID, which is required. Also need a name for the author, which is a string, also required. Get rid of the commas. This is
Oops,
just habit.
nope.
And then the third one is going to be the verified property. And that is going to be a Boolean. And this is just basically to say whether an author is verified on a site. We don't need that. I just want to demonstrate the different types. Okay then, so now we've made 3 different types: game, author, and review. Now there's one more special type that we need to make, and that's the type we're going to call query. Now the query type is something that every GraphQL scheme that you may need to have. It's not optional.
So this is a non-optional type. All GraphQL
So for example, if I want
data
users to
need
be able
this.
to query the review data that we have and get back a list of reviews, then I need to specify that inside this query type. So I could make a field called reviews and then tell GraphQL that we expect the return type of this entry point to be a list of reviews. And now if we left the query type like this, we're essentially saying we only want to expose that one single entry point to the graph, meaning a user would only be able to enter the graph at this point, and then they'd be free to navigate around the graph to eventually get related data, but they wouldn't be able to jump in at any other point, whether that be a single review.
Okay, so
instead
if you
of-
remember the graph that he was showing earlier, or that I kind of briefly showed earlier from his video, what this is doing is telling you which ones you can enter from. So like if you want to get an author with subdata, you have to have author here. If you want to get your review with subdata, you have to have review here. If you want to have game here, etc. However, if we were to leave it like this with just reviews, you could get reviews with subdata of author and game, but you could not go the other way. You could not get an author with subdata of game or whatever. You can navigate through, but you'd have to start with reviews. Get review, blah, 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 author, game, blah, whatever you want. But you have to, this is just defining where you can start your graph.
Of a list of reviews, or an author, or a game, because we've not specified those entry points right here. So this query type is our way of gatekeeping entry onto the graph, if you like, and deciding where a user can jump into it initially. So let's make some more entry points for our users. So after
I'm guessing
reviews,
he hasn't
we shall
typed this
say
yet.
Games, and when a user lands on this, when they request all the games, we're going to send back a list of game objects. And the final one for now is going to be authors, and same again, it's going to be a list this time of author objects. Now eventually we're going to allow landing point.
Okay, so he put in reviews with reviews plural. I have a feeling this cannot be plural because it's referring to the objects, and these are not plural, and they are not plural on his either. So I don't know if he's going to have an error. We'll find out if it even comes to that. But ultimately, he may just fix it, and you may never know.
Points for single reviews.
I bet you later on this will be
games.
singular.
At the minute, we're just allowing the user to land on a list of reviews to grab them all. We'll see how to land on a single one later on. So then, now we've defined our types, and we've also made a query type to say where a user can essentially land on the graph, or where queries can start from. the next thing we need to do is pass all these type definitions into the Apollo server that we made in the previous lesson. So first of all, make sure these type defs are exported from this file so that we can then go ahead and import them in the index file somewhere near the top. So do that first of all, and then once you've done that, we can then pass them into the Apollo server that we created as the first argument, so that Apollo server knows about our different types and query entry points. And I just said as our first argument, and then the first property in the object argument. But anyway, that's our first step completed, making our type defs to map out what the graph looks like. I also said that we need to pass another property into this Apollo server, and that was a resolvers object, which basically contains a bunch of resolver functions. And the resolver functions are there for us to handle any incoming requests.
So now we're going to do resolver functions.
Because at the moment, all we've done is define what the graph looks like in terms of the data.
Probably not even doing it in this class. this segment's about done.
Requests or queries for that data, and that's what the resolver functions are for. So you can kind of think of the schema and the type definitions that we set up as like a map for Apollo to structure the graph, but they don't actually handle any queries. And then we make resolver functions to handle the queries based on our schema and type. So I hope that makes sense. So in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to try making some resolvers for the different types of data that we're making available. We're also going to set up some dummy local data that we can use on the server as well, so that we've got something to send back to the client. So that's coming in the next lesson. Right then, so in the last lesson we made our type definitions to describe.
As a hint for the GraphQL, we are currently we're on lesson 5 of 9. So very basic. This is very intro. It's a crash course. This is what it's all about. We're going to enter in, get to play with it a little bit, I'm sure, on these last ones. And then it's taking something more advanced if we want to do more with it. But for now, it's at least given a concept of what GraphQL is, how it's set up. Very minimal.
Describe the data on the graph and also specify the entry points to the graph using the special query type. And we pass those into the Apollo server so it knows how to set the graph up. Next up, we need to make some resolver functions which allow us to decide how we respond to queries to the graph. So it might be that if a query comes in for all the games, then we could maybe fetch all the games records from a database and return those as a response. Now in our case,
resolvers handle the queries. This just tells you how much or what items you can query, basically. What you can query, and then resolvers are how to query or what the query is.
So for now, what I'm doing is making a new file called _db.js, which stands for database. And this underscore thing isn't necessary, it's just a little naming convention I sometimes use when I'm making a data file. But anyway, inside this file, I'm going to paste in a bunch of data, which is essentially just 3 arrays stored in variables.
Okay, so he's bringing in a bunch of data. I'm going to go to his GitHub here and get that data that he's gotten. So we go out to his data here, and then we are on lesson 5. And then if I want to see his code, I'm going to go to his DB, and there's all of his data. So I am just going to copy all of his data that he's got here. Now, he does create this piece, and he's gonna explain that shortly. But this is just the data he's got.
One array for the reviews, one for the games.
This is just an array of data, multiple fields, and what they are.
The different properties that these objects inside the arrays have are the same ones that we defined in the types that we made in the last.
So when we did the types earlier, we had rating, content, author ID.
Objects, we have a game ID property and also an author ID property. And this is for later when we start to talk about how data is related. But the rest of the properties.
So if you know anything about relational databases, you can probably guess what these are all about. This is just about relating the author to the games table. The reviews only have these as important data points. These are what you would get back, things you would fetch and relate from. So if you wanted to connect data, you would pull this information. And then you would have referential integrity would pin these author IDs to this ID, game ID to this ID. And I don't know if these are standards, like maybe they have to be named exactly the same for it to resolve them. But either way, you don't have to reference them.
So if you want to grab this data as well, you can do. It's all up on my repo. I'm going to leave the exact link to that file to grab this data down below the video. Anyway, now we have our data. Let's start making some resolver functions for the 3 entry points that we defined in our query type, because we need to send a response for queries to each of those. So then, to make our resolver functions, we'll first make a new constant called resolvers, and then we're going to set that equal to an object. And
So he's going to go back to index
type that we defined. Now, to begin with,
and
we
up
will
here,
make resolver functions for the query type, because that root query type is where we define entry points to the graph and specify what data should be returned for them. We'll also be making resolver functions for other types later on as well, like the review type and author type, when we start talking about related nested data. But for now, we just want to make resolver functions for every field defined in the root query type.
oh, really?
So one for reviews, one for games, and one for authors. And
Oh.
to do that, we make a property called query, capital Q, which matches exactly the type name. And this property is going to be an object as well. And now we can define in this object resolver functions for each of the properties defined on our root query type. So the way this is going to work is that we need
So
to
basically, this
basically
is everything that you have
called
from.
reviews.
We're going to create
Games,
resolvers that
games,
reference the
authors
query
called authors.
type that we
These
put
need to
up in the
match.
schema.
So if we go over here, our first one is going to be for games, and then this is a function which returns some data. And basically, we want to return the data to a user that they've requested. Now, they've requested games, so we need to send back an array of game objects. Now, in order to do this, we need access to this DB file, so let me import that at the top. I'm going to come to the top and say DB, and then just paste in this import. So import DB from ./_db.js. And then down here, we can use this to say DB dot, and then whatever the property is down here. So we've got games, authors, and reviews that match up to this data. So we want to send back DB dot games. And that's all there is to it. We're sending back the array of games. Now remember, when a user makes a query, they can do so like this. So let me just do some comments like this. And if they make a query, they might make a query that looks like this, games, and then inside here they want specific properties like just the title. Now if we're returning the full array right here, you'd think, well, we're returning the ID, the title, the platform as well. However, Apollo handles that for us. All it needs to know is where to grab the data.
All this does is tell Apollo where to grab the data from. It's not guaranteed you're going to get all games. If you don't ask for all the game information, you won't get all the game information. You'll just get games.
So we don't have to worry about which fields are returned.
The fields you want.
Apollo server is going to do that for us, okay? Which is really cool. So let's get rid of that. That's the first resolver function done. Dead simple. So the second one is going to be for reviews. Let's do that. Come back to index, and we'll say.
Oh, I got to put a comma.
Reviews. This is also a function. We need to return db.reviews, and then the final one is going to be for authors. So let's do that. Authors. And then inside here we need to return db.authors. Alright, and that's it. We've made our 3 now basic resolver functions for this data over here. And that's pretty much all we need.
Okay, so this is a very basic thing, but I'm seeing in my mind's eye, that if you have a bunch of different components and things going on writing data, you're going to be calling all the different parts, which you're going to be doing these resolver functions at each location. So I'm wondering if there's a way to, I don't know, encapsulate the resolvers, like create a file that's just called like resolvers.js, and then you import that, you export the constant resolvers, and then export that to whatever application needs it. And then you don't have to do this at every location. I would, so you don't have to have a resolvers at every location, because it seems a little redundant to have to write this everywhere. I mean, you could have the entire database even in the resolvers, unless somehow there's a simplification in doing that. I would think you just need the resolvers. You shouldn't need, you could have the entire database in one schema, all the resolvers together. That's my thought. But
Need to do. So before this works, we need to pass this resolvers object into here as the second property on this argument. So let's do that. We'll say resolvers, and that's it. So now what we want to do is start up this server so that we can test it from the front end. So let me do that by opening up the terminal. And if you've got nodemon installed, you could type nodemon and then the name of the file, which is what I'm going to do. And basically what nodemon does is it restarts the server every time you make a change to the server. Otherwise, if you're just using node and then the file name, you need to manually cancel the server every time you make a change and rerun it to pick up that change. So we're going to say nodemon and then the name of the file we want to run, which is index. And hopefully, oops, we get an error. So what's the error?
his reviews, I bet you it's reviews.
So reviews, did you mean review?
Yeah. Guessed it. I told you he had a typo in there.
Yeah. Let's go to schema.
See, he's got reviews and he's got the plural review.
I
I don't even know if I have nodemon installed. See, I don't have nodemon installed. I got to install nodemon. Do I just type npm install? npm install nodemon? Huh, that is a thing. All right. Now we'll run this. Still didn't work for me though. Oh. What is nodemon? Is that a thing from here? Problem matcher. I don't know what that is. Is that what it's talking about? To use this, add the nodemon or nodeman watch problem matcher to your tasks JSON as appropriate, for example. Does he have that? Is nodemon in his thing? What did he say? Add it to tasks. Your tasks.json. He doesn't have a tasks.json. I don't know where he's getting that from. So I don't know what nodemon is. I don't know if this is the nodemon it's talking about. I lean towards it's not. But he says if you have it. Yeah, it doesn't like it. So something's different about mine versus his.
And now hopefully this is going to work. I'm going to cancel out this process and run it again. And okay, the app crashed again. We have another error. So let's have a look what this one is. Okay, address is already in use. Okay, so that's because I've got another instance of a GraphQL server. Okay, so how do I install nodemon? How to install nodemon? Oh, I should probably say VS Code. npm first install nodemon as a dev dependency. Let's try this. So where is your VS Code? I have pretty new version of VS Code, like it's just recently installed. Your VS Code launch.json file.
I don't have, where is that? See, I always love hidden files. I've always hated hidden files. They drive me crazy. What is the file that we're looking at? Launch settings. Yeah, see, I don't know how to edit launch.json. Let's go see. How to edit launch.json. Type open launch.json. Okay. Just part of this is just learning VS Code. You know, VS Code is new to me too. So I haven't, before all of this, I've used it, but certainly not to the point where I started learning any hotkeys. Aha. Is that what it is? Control-Shift-P to open the command palette and type open launch.json, and it will open launch.json file for you. If you also can't open launch.json, then try the way below. Check if the VS Code folder exists in the root folder. If not, then create a new one and create file launch.json. Really, you can create a folder that way? I don't see one. .vs code, and then if not, then create a new one and create file launch.json. We'll just have to create it then, I guess. Apparently I don't have a launch.json in my code. So whatever it did, it just took me some weird spot. The most important piece is the runtime executable property that points to the nodemon script and program property that points you to the entry. So I've been trying to run this, but it's like it's not that easy, I guess. How to fix nodemon install. Install the local installation of nodemon can be run by calling it from within npm script. Because every time I've tried to run yeah, see, it doesn't work. Whatever nodemon isn't working.
Up and running, so let me just close that down first of all. Okay, so I've just done that. I'm going to cancel out of this again and try running it third time, hopefully.
So he's getting this nodemon to work. I don't know what nodemon is, but it has something with node. install, and I've already done installs. You can also install NodeMan as a dev dependency, which I have, install-save-nodemon. But it's not working. If you have a package.json file for your app, you can omit the main script entirely, and NodeMan will read the package.json for the main property and use the value as the ref. NodeMan will search for script start property and package.json as of NodeMan. Also check out automatically running, manual restarting, config files. A config file can take any of the command line arguments as JSON key files for. I'll go here. Name. NodeMan homepage, NodeMan O. Other standard package.json values. NodeMon config. GraphQL crash course, dev dependencies, NodeMan. For a config file, but under NodeMon config in the package.json file, for example, take the following package.json. Note that if you specify --config file or provide a local nodemon.json, any package.json config is ignored. Using NodeMan as a module. I don't know how to set this up because it's not installing right. Usage. Either through cloning with Git or using npm, the recommended way. Any NodeMan will be installed globally to your system path. I have tried this. I did exactly that. Huh. I tried it. It's not working. It says the term NodeMon is not recognized as the name of a commandlet. Let's see if there's something I'm missing. Well, let's just see what happens if I do this other piece. I know it says install it as dev, but obviously that's not working. So let's do it like this one says. We're going to go just like install npm nodemon. That didn't work. What is he doing on his? Oh, not npm. doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe this node-mon doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe it's not good for...
Server up and running. So let me just close that down first of all. Okay, so I've just done that. I'm going to cancel out of this again and try running it third time. Hopefully this is...
So his is going. His node-mon does stuff. My node-mon doesn't do anything. So whatever I'm doing, it doesn't work. Install node-mon globally. Did that. Get prefix. All right, let's try this thing. Jeez. Config get prefix. You will get output like this. Okay. Oh, I really kind of didn't. I didn't actually get whatever it says. All I got was this user can app data roaming npm. Go to the advanced setup environment mail, click new under user variables, pop-up form will be displayed past the following values. Let's see here. Node-mon not working in VS Code. You have to install node-mon in your project. Already did that. For use in local, you should use this statement. When you run node-man-free from your terminal, it tries to resolve it as a shell command, as node-man is not installed globally. Did all that. Running npm install or npm I without -g installs packages. Direct to your project. Open PowerShell. And I always like that they always just assume you know stuff. Like, would add this to dev dependencies. Okay, and where is dev dependencies? Where would I add that to? Just doesn't, they don't tell you. And running npm self-implement, which is your project, which means that node-man is inside your project's node modules. To use that local installation, add node-man as one of your scripts in package.json. And then run it with npm run script name. So he's got scripts. Where are, I don't even have scripts in my package. Oh, there it is. Start dev. All right, let's put this over here. Let's try to make bonkers. All right, so we're gonna go here, and they're saying put it in here. I don't understand why this needs to be done, but whatever. Start :dev. Still doesn't explain to me why this is doing this. Because all I want to do is what his does. But see, I get this. I don't feel like this is going to fix my problem, to be honest. Gotta love how you get stumbled by things as simple as installing utilities. Oops, that's not what I wrote. It's not what I wanted. Hey, that's not a thing either. I think a lot of people just assume that you know where things go because they've done it, and they therefore think that it's all gonna work. I don't think this is going to do anything. Server.js. I don't think that's a thing. Yeah, that's not a thing. Is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. Node app.js. App.js. Yeah, it's because I don't have an app.js. Didn't run that. That's a different thing. I'm just trying to figure out why NodeMon doesn't work here. It doesn't do anything. It just says it's not a word. Well, now it says that. I don't know. That? I don't need this, obviously. So run PowerShell as admin, which I don't think that I already tried that. I mean, I ran it. I am admin, so whatever. And then run this. It doesn't say you have to put it in any particular location. There's any way to set this policy by command prompt. Run command as admin. Okay, so in theory, oh my gosh, something happened. The requested module.dbjs does not provide an export name default.
This is going to work now. Okay, cool. So now the server is ready at port 4000.
App crashed, waiting for file changes before starting. It says app crash, waiting for file changes before starting. I don't know what that means. I don't have any file changes. And why does my db.js need a default?
Awesome. Alright, so now if you visit localhost port 4000 in the browser, you're going to see Apollo Explorer. So it automatically spins this up for us so we can test out our GraphQL server. And let me just take you on a quick tour of this. First of all, if you go, so save that. And now hopefully this is going to work. I'm going to cancel out this process and run it again. And okay, the app crashed again. We have another error.
The requested module does not have an export named default. Why does it need a default? He didn't say I had to put in a default. See, I'm trying to fix things that shouldn't even be issues. We're not making your object available for external use. The way that this is done is via the export statement. I am too. Am I missing something? No, there's nothing here. It's just underscore db.js. So there is no he's got a thing called open editors. He's always had that. I always wonder how he does that. Is that an add-in? Showing him what he's working on. I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal, but it allows you to quickly toggle between them. Especially when you have a lot of files and you're only working on a few. It's nice to have those up. But I'll worry about that later. Oh, here we go. I mean, I have a lot of them open at the moment, but at least it's a thing. I don't know what the problem is, folks. I don't understand the problem because I have exactly what he has. I'm literally looking at the same thing. His schema looks exactly like mine. Kinda. Well, I mean, I have this and an extra space, but that's not really going to do anything. I don't know what the problem is.
Singular type inside a list. Alright, so save that. And now hopefully this is going to work.
Waiting for file changes to be forced. Sorry, see, that's what I have here.
I'm going to cancel out this process and run it again.
So do I need to stop it? Is there like a way to? I don't know. He's not getting that. I don't know why the requested module. Let's go see. Let's go look to see if my index file that I'm actually trying to run has got a problem. I may have forgot something here. Apollo server, start standalone server. Add Apollo server standalone. Then we got the data db dot backslash underscore db dot js. It's coming in the database. And then we have constant resolvers. And we have constant server. Then we have constant URL. Await. And console.log. So we've really got, well, kind of. What do I have? Console.log server ready at, I don't know what I typed here. He must change this. This must be something he alters at some point. Ready at, why am I typing that port? See, he's just got it ready at URL. And he's changing this. Ready at $, squiggly URL. Still has this problem though. I don't know what that is. Does not provide. Nothing like troubleshooting add-ins. Well, I mean, I don't know what else is going on here. All the running server process in the background, so all you need to do is stop them from the terminal. For Windows, go to the task manager. In the terminal, using below command to kill the existing running port and restart your service. Okay. Kill all. -9 node. I don't even do anything. That's not even a thing. Kill all -9. I don't know. I don't think whatever it is, it doesn't like. I mean, it's starting to work. I mean, the node mount thing kind of worked, but now I don't know what this unexpected end of input syntax error. What do you mean? Import db from dot backslash or / underscore db.js. Exact match. Type defs, which is right here. Okay. I wonder if, oh, that one's come from schema. No, import type defs from .schema.js. All right, I think I have to be calling it here. I have to go do some yard work before it gets too late. It gets too dark. I mean, it's only 3 o'clock here, but you know, I'd rather do it when it's warm-ish, which right now is, well, we're in the mid-60s. I guess it's pretty good, but it doesn't work. I don't know, but we're almost. I mean, we are almost done with 5 out of 9, but I do need to figure out why this doesn't work at some point. At some point, I need to figure this out. Const URL equals await start standalone server. Oh, I wonder if this little T matters. I don't, obviously, case matters in this. Start stand alone, and I have a capital E there too. mean, that's probably not going to fix my problem, but nope. It still has this thing. Import DB. It doesn't like DB. Am I putting it in right? Maybe it's supposed to be, is it bracketed? Import DB from dot. Am I using the wrong? I mean, I am using double quotes, but still db.js. It doesn't like DB. Where is DB defined? Because if it's in here, I don't have anything called DB in here. So I'm not, is it supposed to be encapsulated in a file here? I don't have this. Did I miss that when he did it on the thing? Unknown type author. Okay, so games, authors, reviews. Let's go look at his schema. Unknown type author. Did you mean author? Oh, is it supposed to be author with an E? Or did I type author with an E? Or, oh, it is, oh. I don't know how to type. Okay, now what? Server ready at undefined.
So what's the error? So reviews, depot, the server is ready at port 4000, awesome. Alright, so now if you visit localhost port 4000 in the browser, you're going to see Apollo Explorer. So it automatically spins this up for us so we can test out our GraphQL server. And let me just take you on a quick tour of this. First of all, if you go to schema, then you're going to see the different queries that we can currently make. So you can see it's looked at our code.
There you go,
it's seen the
Apollo
different
server.
queries we can make, the different entry points, our authors, games, and reviews right here. And it also shows the data type. So if we click on this, it's going to show the different fields that data type has. And it shows what we can basically get back. All right. So we have those three data types right here. Also, if we look at scalar types, it's going to come down here. It shows the different things we're using. Directives. Okay, we don't really need to worry about directives for now. If you go back to Explorer, this panel on the left is where we're going to make queries. This is where we're going to get the response. Down here, you might see another panel as well. This is for variables, which we're going to look at for those three data types right here. Also, if we look at scalar types, GraphQL server. And let me just take you on a quick tour of this. First of all, if you go to schema, then you're going to see the different queries that we can currently make. So you can see it's looked at our code and it's seen the different queries we can make, the different entry points, our authors, games, and reviews right here. And it also shows the data type. So if we click on this, it's going to show the different fields that data type has. And it shows what we can basically get back. All right. So we have those three data types right here. Also, if we look at scalar types, it's going to come down here. It shows the different things we're using. Directives. Okay, we don't really need to worry about directives for now. If you go back to Explorer, this panel on the left is where we're going to make the queries. This is where we're going to get the response. Down here you might see another panel as well. This is for variables, which we're going to look at later on. So let's make our first query. You can name this something different if you want. So I could say something like games query to get the games. You don't have to name it that. It doesn't really matter what it's called. But now I want to get the games. So I can click on that. And remember, we have to open.
Trying to figure out where he's at. Oh, here's the operation. So he's just typing stuff in here, I guess. Query, games query. Example query. All right. So we just type in query.
Put up our curly braces and specify what fields we want from this particular resource. So I could say that I want the title of each game and also the platform of each game. So now, if I click on this, we can see we get an array of all the games inside a data object. So we have this one, the title and the platform, title and platform, and so forth. So we're getting all of the games. Awesome. Alright, so let's change this to something else. Let's try the authors. And from each one, we want the name, and we also want the verified status. Click on this, and it's going to fetch those for us. Mario, verified true. Yoshi, false. Peach, true. Awesome.
All right, there we go.
Let us try the other resource, which is reviews. And then from here,
He's getting the other ones, but you can see what it's doing. It's getting name verified. It's doing exactly what it asks. You type it in. This is a way to kind of play with the Apollo server. Just getting myself familiar with all of the environments that it's working with.
Get rid of content, and I could get rid of ID, and just say that I want the rating. Click on this, and now it still fetches all the reviews. But we only get that rating.
See, it just gives you what you want instead of grabbing source. So now we can go back here.
Full array of data. Apollo is using our resolver function and the data we return to automatically.
Now this is using what you defined here as a part of this localhost.
So this is all working now. But what if we wanted to fetch just a single review or a single author?
And this is where he's going to kind of go into how to do specific calls.
Called query variables, and we'll talk about those in the next lesson.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. We've got 4 left. Now we're going to get into a little bit more meat. Now we've actually gotten into setting it up. We've done everything involved with kind of playing with it, getting data going. Now we're going to get into kind of calling down specific pieces of the data, related data, mutations, and I don't know what those are. But I think mutations are adding and removing data from it. So you're mutating the code, you're changing the code. Or not the code, you're changing the data, you're mutating it to something different because it's altering. So that's what we'll be doing next time. So we're going to get into more specific calls, changing the data, getting data that's related. So this is going to be getting like sub data, like authors related to reviews, related to games, and that's it. That's all it is, really. That's all this query GraphQL course is. We'll probably finish it tomorrow, I'd imagine. I have a thing at 3. We'll see how much I get done in the morning. I am going to kind of fly through this Python thing a little bit in the morning too. Hopefully get that one, if not done, really close. We'll try to get started tomorrow. I'm going to try to see if I can get started by 8:30. So I'll get a couple hours of both in, or maybe we'll see how far I can get of each. Maybe we can get them both done in the morning. That'd be great. They're both pretty simple. There's only, according to the times of each of these items, assuming I don't get into too many of these little rabbit holes that I get stuck down sometimes trying to fix things, we're talking about less than 40 minutes of actual screen time running for this code. So if I keep up pretty good, we're talking about an hour. The other one, I don't know how much it's going to take because I skip a lot of lecture. Cruise through quite a bit. I got through 2 weeks in about 2 hours. So we'll see if I'm going through a week an hour. That one goes a lot faster because there's a lot less code stuff going on. And you do your basic test and then you're done. You're flying through it. So then we'll have to do an advanced Python and something else later. I would like to say, if you're into miniatures at all, check out the Mage Cage and the X Case at YouTube and Instagram under Active Minds Games, Minds with an S. This is for collecting your miniatures, displaying them, transporting them, and just they expand with your miniatures. You snap them onto each other, connect them front to front, back to back, top to bottom. Create your own little cube of any size, any wall display you want of any size. to be able to display your minis, or even just take a sub amount of them with you to your local shops and stores where you play your D&D or you play your Warhammer 40K, whatever it is that you're playing, and you get a lot of your miniatures to go with you, just the ones you want. If that kind of thing interests you and you are into that kind of gaming, do check those out. And if you want, we don't have any clear units yet. You'll see on my screen here, we got some clear ones lit up with LEDs. We can light up the ones we do have with LEDs. We have the magnetic inserts, we have the metal base inserts, we have the flex iron bases that will allow them to attach to the magnets that we can put in the bases. So all that stuff is available if you want to get some at AM Games Direct. These are all things that are helping me to keep this stuff going, keep doing these streams, and also to try to get get these cases out to people. We have had them out, but we're going to make bigger, better ones as part of the Kickstarter. So if you want to be part of the Kickstarter, follow us on Facebook, same name, Active Minds Games, Minds with an S, and be sure to follow us there. Let us know, hey man, I want to get some of these minis and some of these cases for my minis, and be part of that Kickstarter. We'll announce that when we hit 800 followers. Currently, we're at just over 400, so help us out there. Till next time, you take care.